All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Equitable Compensation 101 workshop. It is such a great pleasure and honor for me to introduce our incredible speaker and workshop host today, Heather Odendaal. Heather Odendaal is an accomplished Canadian entrepreneur, brand builder, and event producer whose experience in corporate environments has inspired her to create and found W North, a global organization dedicated to the development of women mid-career on a trajectory towards senior executive leadership. Prior to launching her organization, Heather was employed as a sales executive for a Fortune 500 company. There, she noticed the lack of women in senior executive positions, and she and her husband decided to take matters into their own hands to launch W North. What originally started as an annual conference back in 2015, feels like a long time ago now, W North now connects top female business leaders in corporate, public, and entrepreneurial sectors through the Members Club, which provides women with development opportunities, including workshops, leadership, masterminds, events, courses, as well as 100% virtual forum of online content and more. W North also holds chapter cities throughout North America and the UK, where members can network and uplift each other through meetups, group exercises, and activities. Team W North is super hard at work highlighting and solving the problem of the insufficient support structures in North America for women in the workforce, which has been even more pronounced over this last year and a half. In today's session for Equitable Compensation 101, Heather will be focusing on closing Canada's gender power and pay gap by discussing the realities, challenges, and key observations of achieving equity in the business and on your team, with her incredible community building lens to solve insufficient support structures for women in North America. That is all from me. I am so excited for our session today, and I will pass it over to you, Heather.
Thank you so much, Jenny, and thank you all for joining my session today. I'm really excited to get started. I have a couple of slides I will get up in a second, but I first of all just wanted to acknowledge and appreciate the timing of this All Things People conference, and just acknowledging that over the last 2 years, we have seen a fundamental shift in the style of leadership, that the way that we run our businesses. And as startups and small businesses, we have a huge opportunity to be able to shift leadership. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that in my presentation today. But when Bazola asked me a few months ago to talk on this subject at a conference that is so people focused, I said, without a doubt, sign me up. So that's why I'm here today. So give me a second while I bring up, nope, that's the wrong one. Hang on. Let me share my screen. And I'll just get a little bit, I'll get started by sharing a little bit about me. There was a big intro, so I won't go too far deep, but I wanted to highlight some of the reasons why I can talk on the subject, and a little bit about my background. So I started my own events business in 2010 after working in local, national, and international events. Scaled my team up and down. Events has been a key core concept of our business. So I come to you from the lens of running W North, but also from running Bluebird Strategy. And Bluebird Strategy, as an organization, we have done between 1 to 2 million in revenue. So we're on the smaller side of startups. But as many of you may be starting out, I think a lot of the some of the knowledge I'm going to be sharing with you today might be useful in scaling your business or building your culture from the ground up. I am also currently consulting for organizations in the area of human resources and public relations. And some of you might think, well, where do those two intersect? And we'll get into a little bit of it further down the line. But one of the things that I truly believe in this current landscape with recruitment is that there is a big marketing and PR aspect to getting the word out about your culture and attracting those new candidates for all of the jobs that you have to hire for. So that's one of the things that I've been doing for a couple of companies, also with the lens of achieving gender parity. I'm working with a tech company and a couple others right now on really how do we make your company more attractive to a diverse a group of people who will want to come knocking on your door to take all those jobs that you have to hire for. And as some of you may know, if you follow me on LinkedIn, and if you don't, please add me and connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm super active on that platform. I am vocal about the gender power gap in Canada and advocating for change. And one of the things that I feel really strongly about is that small businesses and startups have a huge role to play. So that's just a little bit about me. Why does equitable compensation matter? Well, we're talking about building trust among our teams. We can't have trust if we don't fully understand where everyone is at and how people are being compensated. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Employee retention. Again, how are we going to keep people from jumping ship? Previously the trend was that you would stay in a job for 5 to 6 years. We're seeing that decrease to more to like 2 to 3 years, if we are lucky in kind of the startup world. Winning the Great Resignation. So how can we actually capitalize on the fact that there is a lot of movement in the job market? In the last month, and I'm probably not alone in this, we have seen I personally have seen many of my contacts from very large organizations, large tech companies. They've exercised their options and they have left. Many of them not with a plan. Some of them have started their own companies and some of them are consulting and looking for work. So there is an opportunity there if you are in a business where you maybe don't have full-time work. That's one of the methods that I've used in building my events-based startup is we have really seasonal roles. So sometimes we will have a role that scales up to full-time, scales down to part-time. I utilize other entrepreneurs who have small businesses to bring them into the fold. So all of these entrepreneurs that have started new businesses or started consultancies are a tool that you can use as well. So also in that same thread, recruiting the best of the best. Some of the most brilliant people I know are currently on the market. And so how are you going to capture them for your business? And then equitable compensation matters because it's key to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So looking into the issue of the gender pay gap. So this is definitely something that I am very passionate about. As we know, it's a multi-layered issue. Generally, the more barriers you're facing in the workplace or society, the harder it is, the harder you are hit by this gender pay gap. And it's not just about gender. We've got challenges and struggles among women from minority groups, older women, those with disability, women who are migrants or refugees. There are a number of different factors that sort of play into the pay gap. I threw in some statistics here. I know none of them are new, but I think it's always good to remind ourselves as to why we're in this session and why the work is important. So current statistic is it will take 267 years to close the economic gender pay gap. That has also increased over the last few years. The pandemic, as we know, has disproportionately affected women. And we are in this, I believe, a great opportunity as small businesses, as startups, as the organizations that will shape the future to help change this. Larger organizations, institutional organizations have good intentions, but it will take them much longer to make these shifts. So today I'm focusing on the shifts that you can do as a smaller business. Wanted to touch a little bit on the difference between the gender pay gap and the gender power gap. So, and this also comes in, the gender pay gap also brings into play some of the other topics that I like to talk about, which is flexible work and other forms of, and I don't actually fully get into all of them today, but job sharing, using consultants, having some more flexibility in the shape of your roles. If you are a business that can do that, there are many people that are not looking for 40 hours a week right now. So I won't get into that too much today, but the gender pay gap is at the top and the gender power gap is at the top, and the pay gap is a symptom of that power gap. So what we have is women are going to lower paid jobs because they're unable to find a well-paid role, as an example, that they can work for 15 to 20 hours a week. In the last 5 years, we have seen a shift, and we are beginning to see more of a shift in the way jobs are structured. But I fundamentally believe we still have not seen that big enough shift in terms of, in my dream world, you go to Indeed.com or your job search, and it does actually it is enacted like this in Switzerland and a couple of other countries, where you can search by number of days of the week, or in Switzerland, they use percentage. So say I want to work 30% of the week, so 3 days a week, I can actually search for jobs, in professional jobs that allow me to only work 3 days a week. So the reason I'm mentioning this is because as a small business owner myself, I have utilized my flexibility in the way that I build jobs for my employees and contractors to my advantage, and being able to get way better candidates because I have been able to build jobs around their schedule. So that's why the gender power gap and the distinction is really important, is because if we aren't giving high-level positions and making high-level positions available to part-time workers, we are always going to have women and minorities and people who generally have to remove themselves from 40-hour-a-week jobs out of the game. One more slide around this, just to acknowledge that Canada has the 8th largest gender wage gap in the world. So you can see that the US is here in green. I do believe that, there are multiple factors for that, but I also think that the startups and the small businesses on this call can have a huge impact on changing that. So I talked a little bit about this at the beginning, and I'm, really inspired by the B team, who has come up with basically a letter to leaders that is signed by I've got some of the leaders here. So Richard Branson, Jesper Brodin, the CEO of IKEA, Ariana Huffington, Mark Benioff, the founder of Salesforce, Indra Nooyi, former CEO of Pepsi. All of these global leaders got together and determined that we cannot fix the world's biggest issues unless we push for a new leadership paradigm. And you're interested in learning a little bit more, I encourage you to go to the newleadershipplaybook.org. But fundamentally, and the reason I'm bringing this up is there is an opportunity for us to change the systemic ways in which we have been doing things. And for the purposes of equitable compensation, we have the opportunity as startups and small businesses to do things in a non-traditional way. And this is the way that we are going to truly shift and break down some of those barriers. And we, if you're interested, I mean, I'm going to have to mention this. If you are interested in learning more about this and the new leadership paradigm, it is the theme of our W North conference, which is happening next month. So there's a little plug for that. But this is what the public is calling for. And so that's sort of the underlying tone of a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today. And this is essentially that new leadership paradigm: bold, brave, purpose-driven, and principles. And within that, we've got sustainability, equality, and accountability. And with that as a framework for running your business, that is going to be a game changer in terms of diversifying the employees that you have, keeping your employees happy, and having them engaged and staying with your organization in the long term. So here's the opportunity. I love this: human beings versus human doings. So when we talk about Equitable Compensation 101, I don't want everyone to just think about it from a lens of monetary compensation. We are also talking about non-monetary compensation. In fact, we have the ability as startups to provide other non-monetary benefits, maybe in some cases in lieu of maybe not like being a startup and not having as much money to be able to throw at a candidate. I have done that myself with my team as we grow and as we scale, and even during the pandemic, when there were things that I couldn't necessarily afford to do, I looked at things that I could do for them that wouldn't cost the business any money. So a couple of those things, and I'll use my own business as an example. We have a 32-hour-a-week schedule. So we work 4 days a week. Every employee picks how they would like to shape that 32-hour-a-week job. We also have 3 to 4 weeks vacation, one of which is usually in the summertime. Our business drops down a little bit in the summer, so we encourage our employees to take at least one of those weeks in the summertime. And then also, we are remote first. We have situational, we have locations that we prefer our candidates to be in, but we definitely have always kind of worked in and operated in a remote first. So if it's being able to work from their home country, or if it's to go home and, visit with their family, and whether it's North America, whether it's Europe, wherever, we've tried to instill a really flexible policy on that. So don't discount the non-monetary benefits that you have at your disposal as a small business. So, question number 1. And this is where I'm going to get back. I might actually try and get back onto seeing you guys because I'm sharing my screen. I would like to have a little bit of a discussion and encourage some conversation in the chat around how have your employee benefits changed since the pandemic. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute because it's hard for me to see what's going on. But while I get a chance for you to kind of drop that into the chat, I will share with you a little bit about how we've changed our roles and how we've shaped our roles a little bit differently during the pandemic. Well, for one, we were not a remote first business before we started the pandemic. We have slowly shifted there. So that's one thing. The other thing I would say is that we have the opportunity for unpaid leave, and we do encourage that. If there is an opportunity for a longer vacation or a longer travel home, especially after the pandemic. As an example, I had a couple of new employees start last summer, and they were from Europe, and they hadn't been home for over 2 years. Now, it's difficult when you've just onboarded some employees to be able to say, yeah, go ahead, take 3, 4, maybe 5 weeks, holiday and remote working to go over there. But we did, and we allowed for flexibility with regards to where they were based. We allowed for them to take some advanced vacation, and in terms of being as flexible as possible and acknowledging and meeting them where they're at. I truly believe that has been a game changer in the passion that our team executes on, because they know that deep down we care about their family. We care about the fact that they haven't seen their loved ones. And so we have made, a number of changes and shifts with regards to that. So I am going to just share my screen again. Actually, while I do that, Team Tech, is there a way for me to share my screen and still see chat? Or I'm not sure if that's a possibility. So hang on, I will.
You should be able to see chat on the right-hand side when you share your screen. The screen should be in the middle, and on the right-hand side of your window, you should be able to see chat under sessions.
I think what I'm doing is I'm sharing.
So once you share the tab, you can go back to the main Hopin.
I can go back,
tab.
And they won't see what they won't see.
No, they won't see your Hopin screen. They would only see the screen that you're sharing. And then you can go back to the Hopin screen.
Got it. Okay. I think it's like I haven't done this before. Okay, here we go. So, all right, perfect. Okay, so next slide. Wanted to talk a little bit about the shift. The Great Resignation really is just the great reshuffle. The majority of women who are leaving the workforce that I talked to, I mean, our community, W North, is a global community of women who are mid-career on a trajectory towards senior executive leadership. Many of them are senior level women. And I started asking the question during the pandemic, what fundamentally is it that has pushed you out of the workforce? And many people in the media, they sort of highlight the fact that, well, it's because I don't have any childcare. Okay, but that is actually not the answers that I heard. What I was hearing was meetings were being planned while I'm not able to attend them. They were being scheduled at 4 o'clock when everyone knows that I've got school pickup, or I've got something else going on, or that's when my babysitter leaves, number of things. Or even during the pandemic, it was not even possible to come to the meeting or come camera on. We saw women leaving their seat at the table because they were being purposely excluded. And the thing about that is that we saw the entire world go online, and we didn't shift and account for the fact that women were going to take a lot of the brunt of childcare. But also, what I think was really interesting is that women left because they lost their voice. And I think what's really important about, oh, sorry, what happened there? Okay. I think what's really important to acknowledge and the opportunity of the Great Resignation is that as women are looking for work right now, they are looking for companies that will acknowledge and meet them where they're at. They will give them business decisions despite the fact that, or they will make sure that they are able to come to that board meeting. They make sure that things are scheduled at a time that is accommodating them. That is a big shift in the narrative. And I think that as an organization, culturally, if you are not considering how you're going to attract those women that have left the workforce during the pandemic, then you're missing something. There's a lot of talk about how few great candidates there are out there, but I don't truly believe that. I truly believe that the companies are not building the right jobs for those candidates. And I heavily use women and working parents as an example because it is my narrative and it's what I understand fully. I am also a working mother myself with a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. But it speaks volumes of, that's just a small subset. That is just an example of one demographic that has left the workforce. There are so many great candidates that I know that are working mothers. And when I ask them why they haven't got into the workforce again, they just haven't found something that works for them. I'll touch on it again because I think it's relevant right now. I am a big advocate for role sharing, job sharing. I myself have also worked for a Fortune 500 company as a remote employee, as a part-time remote employee in a sales function. So I know both sides of the coin when it comes to having a part-time role at a large organization and having a job share at an organization. There is a lot of negativity, or not necessarily negativity, but there are challenges with having part-time roles, especially in sales or job functions where there is measurable goals that need to be achieved. So when that is the case, I am a firm believer in looking at role sharing, job sharing. That is where two people take the same job. One person works 3 days a week. The other person works 3 days a week. They overlap on Wednesday. If you're interested in finding out a little bit more, there's a company out of the UK called Role Share, who is creating a job share market for people to connect and apply for jobs together. It is fundamentally game-changing in terms of flexible work. And so that's just one other element. But to bring it back to this reach shuffle, this is the great opportunity for you to have a look at how are your roles built? How are they being compensated? How are they being structured? And how do you take your flexibility with that and capture some of this really dynamic, sorry, the word is escaping me where you're at, candidates for your role. So we have the gig economy advantage. We have the remote work opportunities. We have the benefits that not large organizations won't do, or they are doing, but they're much slower to do it. Okay, so exercise, culture shifts. What is the critical cultural value, the actions or the shifts in policies and underlying structures you've seen implemented in your organization to improve workplace culture? So I'm going to stop sharing for a second. And I wanted to get a sense of, so even if people are not willing to share all the details of their organization in the chat, I would love to get a sense of where everyone's at in terms of job function. So if we have someone who's in HR, sales, if you can drop that into the chat so I can best understand who's in the audience, that would be fantastic.
Sorry, we have a question in the Q&A section if you want to head over there.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, I think there is it. Am I in the right one?
So on the right-hand side of your section, go under sessions, not event. So if you go under session, you'll see under there.
Oh, yes. Oh, there. I got it. Thank you. Okay. So when considering changes with extended leave, how do you accommodate for a single point of failure roles? Do you backfill or contract? Okay, that's a great question. So I'm wondering, Megan, is this with regards to, would this be a couple months leave or would this be over a year? So I'll give an example with regards to, I mean, this question comes up a lot when I'm currently working with organizations that have Canadian entities and American entities. And of course, in Canada, when we're talking about leave, when we have a maternity leave, it is just standard policy for us to usually have a backfill. We'll hire for maternity role position. In the US, as an example, it's not so easy because they don't actually have much leave to begin with. And even with the organizations that I'm working with that have a couple of months worth of, let's call it top up parental leave, they're still only about 4 months. And so there is this big question, do we backfill this? Do we contract it? Do we leave it? Do we lean on the rest of the team? And I truly believe that we are not going, unless that position is filled, then the challenges are going to continue to come with regards to an animosity against the person who's on leave. Whether it's there or just underlying, I think there needs to be a plan. There needs to be a backfill. There needs to be a support structure. The idea, the old way of just, oh, they're on leave for 2 months. We're just going to we're going to give Bob this and we're going to give Sally that and we're going to make do. That is it's not going to work. And I think that as an example, one of the things I'm seeing, and I have a consultancy that I work with down in Seattle, Lisa Hufford's agency, with the gig economy, there are consultants. And so I've seen this a lot in some of the organizations. They're backfilling with contractors or consultants, not necessarily temp agencies. They're like the new temp agency. So that's an example of something that you could do is bring in a highly skilled consultant who comes into the role for 3 or 4 months. Then you don't have to do the benefits. You don't have to do the same level of employee onboarding. If you're working with an agency, they would have some of those structures in place. But the long story short, in any extended leave scenario, whether it's 2 months or 18 months for our lovely Canadian maternity leave program, if there isn't a solid full-time replacement strategy, there will be challenges. So how much time do I have? I have about 10 minutes left. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. You have 10 more minutes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the importance of transparency in the new leadership. So there is a number of benefits to that. Greater employee advocacy, well-managed expectations, and improved employee performance. But most importantly, I want to acknowledge that this widespread labor shortage, they're basically saying, and I firmly believe this, that pay transparency is the way forward. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. I have a couple of tactics that I use in my small business that I wanted to share with you. And the first being recruitment transparency at the start. So how many interviews have you gone to where you maybe get to the second or the third, or you've maybe been hiring for a role and the topic of salary expectations comes up, but only in the latter part of the process? Well, the problem is, and the stats prove it, that many of the salary expectations are increasing by the day at the moment. You don't know the expectations until you ask. So I think it is a first question in the first, not necessarily the first question, but it is the first interview question that needs to be put on the table from the very beginning. The other thing on that recruitment transparency is, and I've been doing quite a lot of screening interviews recently, and this is important to acknowledge, and if you don't already know this, that your candidate is interviewing you as much as you are interviewing them. So what I usually start with is, before I enter into any questions, and maybe this is because I'm a salesperson in an HR function sometimes, is I will sell them on the culture of the organization. First and foremost, very first interview, the first 5 minutes of our call is focused on, why should you work for us? That's a shift, and it's a shift that we need to make. So that's number one. Number two is the implementation of a wage matrix. I'm going to flip to that for a second because I do have an example here. So this is an example of a startup wage matrix, and I haven't fully filled it all in because it depends on the organization size, structure, etc. But we built a similar wage matrix at our organization when we had 3 employees. And why is that important? Because as you onboard at whatever level, even if you don't fill all these roles, you need to have a transparency and a consistency to what you are paying. If something ever comes up that's challenged, then you always go back to this wage matrix. We live by this. This is where we are able to, within, let's use an example. Sally starts at level 1. She's a lead specialist, and her hourly salary would be right here. And her, if she decides in an interview process with me that I really want this job, but I am only available 20 hours a week, I would still hire Sally, and we would be able to work out her compensation here. Sally has been knocking the lights out. She's doing such an incredible job. At 6 months, I give her a promotion to level 2. This wage matrix is in our onboarding package. So when we have our new team member sign on to the organization, they go through our onboarding process, they sign off on this. So when I have the conversation 6 months in with Sally, or another one, let's say Joe comes to me 4 months into his role, and he wants a promotion, he wants a raise. We can go back to the wage matrix and say, this is our wage matrix. This is how we keep things equitable. Joe, I can't give you a raise until we've kind of met some of the objectives and you're taking ownership over X, Y, Z. But I can give you, enter maybe some other benefits that might be possible for him. Or, as we've done recently, we take a look at the job market and realize our wage matrix needs to be upped. So we reevaluate the wage matrix and make some changes. So if anyone, I have an Excel version of this. If anyone's interested, please feel free to DM me. This has been a game changer for our organization, small, medium, or large, in terms of being able to have those conversations with people who are wondering when they're going to get taken to the next level. And you can build this around your organization. And I think it's important to acknowledge that even if you are a solopreneur and you're hiring consultants or you're hiring your first employee, it's not too early to do the wage matrix. The third element, which because of time I won't get into as much, is a competency matrix. So you can take a look at that. Look it up if you want to learn more about it. But I wanted to just share this quote. I have every intention of telling my kids years from now that there was once a time when you'd apply for a job and have no idea what it paid. And they would think that that's ridiculous. I tend to agree. So, in terms of transparency, this is something that I am definitely seeing from the new wave of candidates. What are the barriers? I'm going to leave some of the questions up because I've got to flip through quite a few things. Business landscape shifting. This is where I wanted to showcase some great examples of marketing your business culture. So we have, there is a campaign that was executed in January by the Skim, and it was called Share Your Leave. I'm going to flip through a couple of these. So we've got Thinkific. Thinkific is a tech startup based in Vancouver. They shared their paid leave. This was a campaign that went pretty viral on LinkedIn over the last few months. We are now in a position where we're not just marketing our products, we're marketing our culture. And so they've outlined some of their key benefits. What we've got in here is like fertility coverage for up to $15,000. That is groundbreaking. I haven't seen that before. They've focused on mental health, flexible work, all of the usual, but some of these things are really shaking things up. Hootsuite. So they're talking about their generous vacation time, their wellness, their Fridays off. These strategies are the new way. I mean, we have to be forthright about why it is that we want, why it is that you would want to come and work for our organization. Here's another one. This one has unlimited flexible paid time off. That is definitely, that's actually one of my next questions is think about what are your thoughts on unlimited flexible time off? Does it work? Does it not work? I've heard stories about people never getting a holiday because they just have so much work to do. So I'm interested in your thoughts. Please feel free to drop that in the chat. One more. This is another example of the Share Your Leave. And it's just about being really transparent. Before I even apply for a job at this company, I know what some of the benefits are. You may even find that some people work for these organizations and they didn't even know that. Oh, wait a minute. We have like a $500 quarterly well-being reimbursement. I didn't know that. So just have a look through some of those. You can check out the Share Your Leave hashtag for more details. And then this is just an example of Oyster, a company that is probably spending more time marketing themselves as an organization than even are marketing their products and services. And finally, these are just some questions if you want to take a screenshot, because I'm almost at time, to ask yourself with regards to your team, your employees, like, are you on the right track? What kind of community are you building inside of your organization? And that is it for me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Heather. I'd encourage you all to reflect on some of those last questions she brought up. I know I've been thinking a lot about that unlimited vacation question as well. So Heather, thank you so much on behalf of all of Venture for Canada for your incredible session today. I know I'm left feeling very inspired myself, and I'm sure many of the folks in attendance are as well. So thank you again so much. It has been such a pleasure to have you with us here. One last note from me is I would encourage you all to move on forward to the networking session just to get a chance to meet some of the other great folks in attendance. And I wish you all a wonderful rest of your days and hopefully some sun shining wherever you may be. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Heather.
Thank you, everyone.